kind of like a, I think people like Mike because I'm kind of a unique kind of character.
And I have
I love to
You just see how games and possessions are more intense, how they mean more. I think the U.S. is going to obviously win.
Benvenuti a tutti a un'altra puntata di Niente che Rispetto. Mi chiamo Patricio Rossofordo e come sempre c'è Ari Krinsky. Oggi parleremo di un passatempo molto americano, la democrazia, e in particolare di cosa succede quando chi riceve voti li usa per scopi malevoli. Parleremo anche dei playoff NBA, del corridore dell'Indiana e del tuono di Oklahoma. Il nostro ospite questa settimana è un campione di ritorno e maestro dei numeri grafici, Owen Phillips. Cosa sta succedendo?
Thanks for having me.
Grazie.
Really good. Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming. Welcome to another episode of Nothing But Respect. How are you?
We have the
I'm
flavor
good.
tranquilizer on with us.
Owen, do you want to tell everyone why I did that?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I kind of no-sold that a little bit. You guys, well, first off, I'll say you guys are having the wrong Substack writer on today. I feel like we should be having the god Ox Portello come on and talk about his Crisis of Cool piece, but I'll happily talk about some NBA award voting
When he
stuff
learns
instead.
a fucking GitHub call, he can come on this podcast. He just all he does is fucking write. Anybody can write.
Yeah.
what the hell, man?
I guess we're talking in Italian because we would need to talk about Flavio Tranquillo, the most contrarian man in all of the NBA media landscape.
Well, second most, because
Second
Stan Van beat him by like a tenth of a
Just a
percentage point or
smidge.
something.
Just a smidge.
To back up a little bit, the Owen wrote an excellent piece outlining the awards voting, and which we're going to talk about a lot, and kind of looking at the data all kinds of different ways, looking at this contrarian stuff, who's a contrarian, who's voting, who's kind of more of a free thinker, whatever. And there's all kinds of very interesting downstream things which we will get into. But one of the things that truly stopped me in my tracks was that of the voting press corps, there are 100 people who vote in these on an MVP for first team, like second team, like all of them. They all vote. Who get to vote in these things? There are 100 people, and one of them is an Italian journalist named Flavio Tranquillo. And I cannot believe they make guys like that.
He's great. His Twitter bio is he's Italian journalist for Sky Sports. His Twitter bio is a father and husband who loves basketball, hates mafia, and lives a great life. Which I think we can all agree with here. We're all
Dude,
family
that's
men.
how I
we all
feel,
hate
yeah.
the mafia here. Yeah. Well, something I like about awards season, they started making ballots public maybe, 10 or 15 years ago. And as we've seen, like, you get fewer and fewer, as the Substack writer guy, another one would be like Basketball Poetry. He wrote this thing that basically tracked that, like, votes have been, there's like a convergence, like there's a larger and larger consensus where more people are having the like sort of correct opinions. And Owen, something that sort of struck me reading your piece today is I looked up Stan Van and Flavio's votes, and despite them having the highest contrarian score, nothing they did was like that crazy. I don't know. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, no, I think that's actually probably right. Like, overall, people are kind of herding towards the same, like, opinions. And so any differences from those consensus opinions is going to, like, look like an outlier. So I think, like, one of the big things that Stan did that made him, quote-unquote, contrarian is that he voted Ty Lue as Coach of the Year when, like, nobody else even really had Ty Lue on their ballot. Probably because his brother is an assistant coach. Maybe, Jeff would have got a little bonus if Ty gets the Coach of the Year, but we won't get into that. But yeah, there's like this, I do think, yeah. So I do think there's like some stuff around just like everybody kind of has the same opinions because they're all talking to each other. I was texting with someone who's an awards voter, and he was explaining how when he's doing it, he takes it super seriously. And so what he does is he like talks to other people who have a vote, other coaches and other like, analysts and stuff like that to kind of help them understand where they should be landing on these types of things. And they're all talking to the same people, so they all end up kind of having the same opinions.
Yeah, it's funny, like, because we'll get into all the contrarian, and there's this really shocking, I would say, decline in contrarian thinking, exactly aligning with Twitter, which is what Mike Scherr's essay or like piece in Basketball Poetry kind of points out, is that basically in 2008 it starts skyrocketing toward basketball, toward a more of kind of groupthink, peaking kind of hilariously in this 2015 to 2017 zone, which I believe to be the most Twittery basketball Twitter period. Like, free agency is being outsourced to Twitter emojis. Like, it's all, we are at peak basketball Twitter, for better and in a lot of cases mostly for worse. But something that Mike points out that I think is worth noting is that, like, there's one reading about this that you superimpose kind of the cultural reading of, like, everything's getting flattened and everything's the same and everybody's, like, groupthink. It might also just be that people are getting better at picking, and there's not some like random, guy who watched like 11 games that weren't in his market, and he's like, oh, you had a fucking great one game I saw, Coutinho Mobley, sixth man of the year. There is a chance that we're getting closer to truth.
Maybe.
But that's fucking boring.
Well, it's boring, first off. But second of all, I do think, I think the larger issue is that we've all converged on the same definition of what valuable actually means. And that, to me, is the, larger order issue. Not that, I agree that everyone's getting it right by, the idea that, he probably was the best player, or, that was the best rookie or whatever like that. But it's the fact that we all have the same definition of what best means now, I think is very unusual. Because 20 years ago, Peja Stojakovic could get a first place MVP vote, and everyone would be like, all right, it's a little weird, but he did have a pretty good season. Now, if you put Karl Anthony Towns as your first overall MVP pick, people would kill you. You just couldn't do that. And it's weird. And it's we all just agree that, all right, these one number metrics are clear signifiers of who's most valuable or who's best. And we all kind of converge on that, because you have to have some sort of data or something to back up your opinion. You can't just be well, I don't know, I feel like it's very valuable that Jalen Williams is on a rookie contract, and that allows the Oklahoma City Thunder to build around him, so maybe he's most valuable. You can't even just take that stance. It's not even something you could be allowed to do.
Maxi Kleber is most valuable because he made the salaries work for the Luka trade.
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly.
Great call.
Well, looking at the analysis you did, you had the sort of, I don't know statistics, so I'm going to use this word in a totally wrong way. The standard deviations they're smaller for the bigger awards that you can more objectively measure performance. The ones that you see with the largest the contrarian score is sixth man of the year, most improved, coach of the year, and sixth man is fairly rigid, but Coach of the Year is basically a narrative award. It's kind of we thought you were going to be bad and you were good, like the Mike Brown one, or we knew you were going to be good, but wow, you're way better, like Atkinson this year. And most improved is it's just such a strange award, because no one has a consensus over are you allowed to vote for a second year guy? Are you allowed to vote for a third year guy? So I wonder, I don't know, does that make sense that those would be the more contrarian-y to you?
No, totally. I think a defensive player of the year and most improved are the two ones where no one can just look up a spreadsheet and be all right, here's the obvious answer, for the exact reasons you just pointed out. Most improved, no one even has a clear definition of it. And then defensive player of the year, everyone mostly agrees the defensive stats are kind of they're okay, but not that great. So you kind of have to use the eye test, which, results in more different opinions about what they're actually seeing on the court and stuff like that. So those two awards I feel are mostly fine and still represent sort of the a bygone era of how people used to vote. Whereas awards that are really big, like Rookie of the Year and MVP, people are just having these conversations throughout the year. Bill Simmons' first week of the season is handing out MVP awards. And so I just think we kind of have a better idea of who the field of candidates actually are by the time that we get to the actual awards voting, because of ESPN straw polls are running every 2 months telling us who's in the race, who's not in the race, and stuff like that. So you can't even have one of these like outside opinions without it being vetted first for like 9 months.
Yeah, it's funny with the narrative thing because you're totally right. Simmons does it. There's ESPN. There's all these structural polls. The who is the MVP? The way too early. Who is the MVP? What's funny about it is there's almost like some doublespeak going on where the pundits are being like, I can't believe we're having this discussion way too early, but the actual reality is that it's an extremely useful narrative device. It's fun to podcast about who's going to win. So the pundits, if anybody, should be the people agreeing and sort of welcoming the fact that we are talking about the MVP way too early, because it's a very useful and fun and exciting grounding narrative tool. The people who should be annoyed with the way too early MVP are basically anybody besides Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, because their kind of truth is getting robbed, or anybody besides the like 5 people that are deemed the possible chosen few.
I sort of like
Totally.
I feel like there's maybe a small on-court effect of all this too, in the way that because the French Open is right now on, so I'm just watching a lot of tennis, and whenever like a player has a chance to like close out a set or a match or something, there's so much pressure on them, and like they play different. Like it really is different to close something out. And I think you can apply like a smaller version of that to the MVP. Like if you are someone like Embiid, who was, or like a couple of years ago, whenever he won, who's like on this quest to like beat Jokic, get the MVP. It's like a big deal for you. You understand, like, when you're leading in the straw poll or whatever, and like that's going to put more pressure on your game. And like, especially for someone like him, that's probably going to change how he plays. And I sort of like the idea of like this like extra level of regular season pressure, just because as we've seen, like the regular season matters less and less, and it's kind of fun. Like it's kind of fun to have an MVP race like that, where like the players are totally aware of like what everyone's doing.
How about this one? Straw poll sounds like Embiid's leg.
That's good.
Bang.
That's good.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's good. It's good. It's spot on. I wanted to ask you guys about like whether you guys actually think it's even a problem, or if we should do anything about the fact that everyone more or less has the same opinion. So like one of the more interesting takeaways to me this year was that 36 voters had the exact same MVP ballot, like 1 through 5 in the exact same order. Like in previous years, like you usually get maybe between 10 and 15 voters that have the exact same 1 through 5. So I find it very interesting that like we've always had a kind of a convergence around the top 2 MVP candidates, but like this year we saw it all the way down the ballot where there was a convergence on the opinion of, who deserved 5th place MVP, which is just also who cares. But to me, that's like a big signifier that like, okay, groupthink has maybe gone too far, that we're now even cohering on a same choice of who should be the 4th and 5th MVP, that, Jason Tatum deserves it more than, Donovan Mitchell for that 4th slot.
I mean, that's interesting because you wrote about this a little bit with like Lowe specifically, because we've sort of talked about like Lowe as this like paragon of consensus basketball reality. Like everyone cribs from his notes. He has like defined the language of value more than basically anyone. And it's funny to remember that he was on the losing side of the Russell Westbrook war, which I think like every time MVP comes up, people talk about that one. They all say like, we got it wrong. Like the one, I shouldn't say this, but Howard Beck's most spicy take that he continues to bring up is like the Westbrook thing, basically as a way to just be like, Twitter people, stop yelling at me. And I would actually like to introduce more chaos into it. And I wrote about this last year because there was this Spanish guy who, when the ballots were coming out, I was like, dog, who put Domantas Sabonis like second on their DPOY ballot? Like, why did Monty McNair, a guy who like doesn't know how to use the computer, why did he get an Executive of the Year award vote? And it was all just this one Spanish guy, and he only writes about Real Madrid, and I couldn't really figure out like why he had a vote. But ultimately, the conclusion I came to is that like I think more of those guys should get votes, because if the NBA wants to be a truly global sport, like I like the idea of like, okay, like 3 guys who work at like New Delhi's biggest newspaper just like get a vote for some reason, and like we should have like 700 awards voters.
Yes, this is exactly what I was getting at. Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Harry. I'll finish at the end. Go ahead.
Well, no, let me tee you up, because you've you've talked a little bit, or you've written about this a bunch. You're in 2020. You were saying you wrote for 538, and then you also wrote a piece for F5 in 2021 about the contrarian or the kind of breaking down the MVP data, the league award voting data in a bunch of different ways. So this has been a passion project of yours. I'm curious about why you have been so interested in this, and then, which we were just getting at, what possible solutions you have.
Why am I so interested in this? I don't know. I just think it's like one of those things that the data is like, the NBA releases this data in PDFs. Like, it's 2025. We can't get a fucking spreadsheet.
The font is so small.
The font is so small. It's clearly like one person who's been in the league office for like 25 years, and like this is one of their core tasks each year. And they're like, I have my templates. I just want to like fill it in this way. Anyway, so that's super annoying. So like one of the reason I kind of got back into it a long time ago was I was trying to scrape PDF files and like bring it into your computer and stuff like that. But
yeah, Ock can't do fucking anything like that, dude.
Yeah,
he can write PDF files. He's probably rubbing his little words on the ground.
Yeah. But what I think we should do about this, I think you're 100% right, Patrick. Like, they should treat this shit like the Oscars treats the Academy Award voting. Like, I'm talking 1,000 voters. Like, you guys should get a vote. Like, Jeff Teague should get a vote. Like, every ball boy in every arena should get a vote. Like, we need to diversify the voting pool so much so that like one contrarian vote, can't get you clowned on, can't get you to like lose your job. Because like all these foreign press guys who have like batshit crazy opinions like you were talking about, they all lose their vote the very next year. Like the NBA is like, okay, that was a mistake. We can't let this guy vote. I bet the guy you're talking about, I bet he didn't have a vote this year. It wouldn't surprise me.
He didn't, I checked.
See, boom. Like, it's the quickest way to lose your vote is to be part of the foreign press and not have an opinion that jives with like the American consensus. Because like a lot of these guys, I think also as well, they just care about different shit. Like if you're ever like, like European soccer, like they don't talk about like legacies and stuff like that, like in the way that we kind of filter narratives in basketball. And so I think they have like a totally different operating procedure for how they view basketball and like what they care about. They're like most valuable. Like, I don't know, that guy seems like a really fun teammate to play with. We should give him most valuable. So yes, I definitely think they should just completely expand the voter pool to such a degree that no one individual vote carries that much weight. That's like, to me, baseline, obvious solution. Second thing is like, I'm wondering if they should go back to privatizing the ballots. Like if they're not going to expand the voter pool and keep it 100, should they go back to making the ballots private?
That would be kind of tight. And it would be interesting to see in which direction it would shift. Like, I don't know if you can see, but I am wearing a Ball Don't Stop shirt. And I wonder if the ballots were anonymized, my suspicion is we'd see this big swing away from like how it's currently going. Like, I think you'd see sort of an analytics like counter revolution or anti-analytics kind of revolution, if that makes sense.
100%. People would be like, there's no effing way I'm voting for Rudy Gobert Defensive Player of the Year again. I just don't want to do it, even if he is the correct choice.
Well, it's funny you use the word correct, because as you were talking about like all these foreign press guys who don't see the game the same way, I actually do think it is valuable to get those perspectives that we would think of as wrong, because like there's no like, because it's not objective. Actually, I do think it's bad that we all see value in this same way. Like totally. I look up at, as Lo says, the Vorps and Schnorps and all that. And like, I think there is some value in that, but I really do also think there is like, it is better for the way we think about and talk about the game if there is like this wider array. And what I would really like is the 1,000 voters, but everyone has to file a short free response, like 500 words justifying like, here's why I voted the way I did. That would be like, they don't even have to make those public. I would just find those fascinating to read.
Yeah, I kind of pitched that idea of like of a podcast where you just host each voter and be like, all right, you have 15 minutes to explain your most controversial vote, and like we're going to put it on the record.
I do. I love that. And I would go just from my own, what I want as a from a content standpoint. If we do 1,000 and the Ball Don't Stops and et cetera, and us are in the in it, I would want it to be public because I just would love to parse all of that data. but that's more of a joke. But I do want to seriously push back a little bit on the 1,000, or it just kind of, or on like blowing it out, because there is a bit of an ongoing, this exact ongoing debate we sort of joked about in jest on the last episode in a different context. We were like, are institutions cool or not? Is this sort of conversation? And I do think there's a push and pull between like, do you want your filtering system to be the like libidinal id of a billion teenagers on TikTok, or do you want it to be like 135 racist white guys in a museum? And there's the both of those are failing us. The 130 racist white guys in a museum was failing us. The libidinal reaction is failing us. But I don't exactly know what the middle is, and so I'm hesitant to like blow it out to everybody gets a vote. I know that's not what you're saying. You're saying maybe 1,000 is that middle ground, but there is a certain part where like, for example, and I'm not in the you joke, but I wouldn't be in the 1,000, but like I feel like totally unequipped to come up with who the third team All NBA is. You know, you really need to be committed to. So maybe it's like, I don't know, make enough money.
Yeah, like I'd like to think that if I was given a vote, I would like make this decision totally independently, but like that's obviously not how it works. Like, because I remember listening to like all the awards show episode podcasts and reading all the columns, and they're like, well, obviously Ty Jerome is like the second if he played enough minutes, and I'm like, interesting. First I'm hearing of this. That's crazy. And like you said, like fourth and fifth MVP stuff, that's where like the 30-second fast forward button comes in so handy. But like the problem with all of this, and the reason why they'll never blow it out like that, is that like there are real financial stakes to this. Like if you make All NBA, you can make $40 million more or whatever on a supermax. And the thing like that feels pretty uncomfortable. Like the idea that like Kevin O'Connor gets to decide like if Jaylen Brown's generational wealth extends like 2 or 3 generations, like that feels kind of icky. But also like, as people have talked about, you know, if you in a salary cap structure, if you have to tie performance incentives to something, this is like the least imperfect way.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Brian Windhorst has said it before, and it's probably true. Like, this is the least bad of all the bad choices, is the way that they do it now. I don't really have much more.
Brian... Oh, sorry, I cut you off. You keep going.
No. I was done. I was going to say I don't have much more to add.
I heard Brian on a pod. I don't remember what pod, but he said something that I thought was very interesting. Was he said that when there is a financial situation, when there are financial ramifications to his votes, he actively picks the player with the finances. And he was just like that he wasn't hiding that. Like that was just like how he has decided to navigate through this. And that was very interesting, because that's like totally calling what we're talking about. It's saying the quiet part out loud, which is like that there's huge sums of money connected to this. I wanted to bring up something that I feel is pretty central to this, which is the concept of voter fatigue. Because when I think about voter fatigue, the entire illusion that this is objective crumbles. I just see it and I'm like, oh, okay. People just get tired of voting for the same person every year because the narrative kind of runs out of juice. And there's all these examples of whatever. And that kind of gets me spinning in this way of like the entire thing is a narrative exercise. Like, I know that we have decided that we're tying, financial stuff to this to give it weight, but like the MVP only exists to be mediated and discussed and broken down via podcasts or whatever. Like, it's not like teams use it. Like, teams aren't like, oh shit, now we got to trade for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's the MVP. Like everybody knows who's good and what they're good at. It is for the fans and to provide a way to kind of like package a season up. And so I don't know. It makes me think of that like the entire thing is a self-sustaining narrative exercise, not a objective truth exercise.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think very correct. And I think like something that like maybe I never had that coherent of a thought, but sparked the feeling was this year when they like didn't announce the Shea MVP for like until way longer than they usually do. I feel like it's usually fairly early in the playoffs, and I wonder if some of that is like the league being confident that the Thunder would like win that series, because like they didn't do it. Like, you know, the Thunder got pushed to 7. Like they totally could have lost that without them announcing the MVP, and they would have like, imagine if they would have announced it after Shea lost to Jokic in that series. Like people would have been like calling for an invasion of Canada. Like it would have been so crazy. So yeah, Owen, what would your free thinker contrarian, where do you think you would be on the spectrum?
Oh, I'd be like way off on the right, because I'd have some like dipshit rule where I'm like, this guy has to, like, I'd have some like, analytic rule that allowed me to never contradict myself, but would just put me in compromising positions from time to time. It'd be like, wait a minute, D'Anthony Melton for Defensive Player of the Year? I don't know about this one. Yeah, so I'd probably be pretty far out on the right side. But like, I do want to like say, like, I think, and this is important for people who are voting or people who are using these like advanced metrics. Like, I kind of use them as like a first pass indicator of like, okay, who's like kind of in the door, and then from there, it's like, choose your own basically adventure after that. Like, after like you meet the minimum amount of threshold, then like after that, it's not looking at just like, all right, he was 0.1 EPM higher than the second place guy, therefore we give it to him. You kind of should be able to sort of, kind of go with like your own gut after that, after they kind of meet like this minimum amount of threshold.
Yeah, and I feel like what you're sort of describing there is like a sort of crude approximation of what the low effect like actually is specifically, because early on he comes in during when everyone is like just screaming about analytics, when like that revolution is like coming to the fore. And he gets I think unfairly tagged as like, oh, he just is a spreadsheet boy. But then you actually listen to him and he's like, okay, I've done the EPM and stuff, and actually like 68 wins matters more, and Shea was good in the clutch. And it's like, those aren't objective arguments. And yeah.
I point is that I wish more people were like that they just like actually like said, okay, I did the work, but like here's why I still think this, or I think that's should weigh more than this other thing. And I think what a lot of people end up doing is just being like, well, the numbers say this person's been better, so let's just go with that guy.
I want to do a little bit of commercial advertising analysis, because the NBA dropped a new commercial that I thought was troubling. In the positive sense, I thought that Caitlin Clark from the logo commercial is like outstanding. They're whatever, but you
guys are gonna tell me a lot about this, because like in Australia, where I'm at, I'm watching these commercials that are absolutely batshit insane that are not being shown anywhere outside of this country. So I have not seen any of these. There?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'll talk about it after Harry's done, but you're just gonna have to paint a picture for me, because I have not seen any of these commercials.
That's really funny. I'm imagining like a wombat, and it's a Trojan ad.
Not far off.
For some reason where I went. The commercial is an NBA commercial, but it has to do with AI, and the commercial, the conceit of the commercial is like, wow, how does this person know all this stuff? How are they able to consume 8 games at once and still have all the data? And then it's this young woman, and she's on a couch looking very relaxed, and she holds up her phone, and she's using this new NBA AI tool. And I don't want to be sort of like so dogmatically anti any technology, but I did find this sort of troubling and connected to what you're talking about, which is I feel like there a certain NBA media crisis that we are having. There are so many games, and there's so much information, and there is this illusion that everybody is liking and enjoying random fucking Portland Trailblazers games and consuming them and watching them and all these stuff. And I just use as an example, like the if you are in the media press corps, you are watching 750 NBA games a year because you're watching 7 games a day every day. That is surely not true, and surely not how any kind of person with any reasonable work-life balance, reasonable joy, reasonable commitment to interesting thinking, like that is not what they are doing. So what they are doing, I think, is doing a very reasonable shorthand, which is like trying to find the people who they trust, e.g. Zach Lowe, and cribbing and borrowing some of their opinions. Like, oh, okay, that's what which is, by the way, what consumers do. That's the whole thing, right? The AI thing is icky to me because it's creating this stupid explosion of demand, which is like, we have 900 games and you're supposed to want to watch all of them, which is not true and not aligned with how regular people consume basketball. And then it is providing a solution for that, which is like, instead of watching all these games to catch up so you can like debate 17-year-olds on the internet, here is a software as a service that we can provide to allow you to synthesize the arguments like well. And like the entire thing is not existing in a universe where people are just watching and enjoying basketball games.
Yeah, it's like B2B SaaS for LaMelo Ball Muse, basically.
Exactly. And I just am like, it bummed me out that the NBA was endorsing this, because it's like, what's the fucking point here?
Yeah, it's like, don't you understand that like you want people to watch basketball games? Like that's like the end point that you should be going for.
Yeah,
they're selling the idea that you too can know ball, and that's
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't watch basketball personally because for like aesthetic reasons. I watch it to win. Like
Right.
I can't win on the court, but I can win in the court of public opinion. And so like tonight, I'm going to boot up Thunder Wolves. I'm going to queue like 100 tweets just calling various players frauds. And like the important thing is like, I'm going to be right. Like I don't give a fuck who wins,
And I mean, we've talked about this. We've jokingly talked about this ball knowing arms race, but like, I do think this is like the kind of like nerve gas mega evil Oppenheimer evolution of this kind of thing, where like, let's outsource the entire ball knowing project to a high powered LLM with Adam Silver's face on it.
I actually wonder if you gave like the best LLM an MVP vote. I guess it would really come down to like what the inputs were for value.
Mm-hmm.
But like my suspicion is they would give you something fucking crazy. You would get like Isaiah Hartenstein, or like honestly, it's crazy that we had Owen on and this guy's name doesn't come up for half an hour, but they would say Luke Cornett is probably the most valuable player in the NBA.
Yeah. No, it's someone actually asked me to do that. I got to rerun the analysis. It was to add like 101st voter just using like EPM and see how far it scores on the contrarian scale. And I want to rerun that later, maybe this week or something like that when I'm bored.
Oh, I just had a thought. I wonder how, as sort of an exercise in, not like as a gotcha, but just to like make a point about how subjective all this is. I wonder how many players you could credibly make a like first team All NBA or MVP case for. Because like there is a case for Cornette. It's like not one that like makes sense if you watch basketball, but it is like on its, if you define, the parameters in this way, like it is on its face a logical case. And I wonder like, is that number like 40 or is it like 8?
Yeah, no, yeah. I think it's like, it could be huge, because I just think we should be able to take it in whatever direction we want. It's like, okay, the Knicks traded 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. They're literally telling us how valuable he is. Like, that is the number one currency. Like, clearly that has value too. So, even though, he hasn't been, like, great this year. But, yeah.
Or if it's, like, production per million paid, it's like Keon Ellis and Luke Cornett, like first team, or like the first team All NBA is like necessarily always all rookies. And it basically is just like, this is a crazy way to like come backwards to the idea of wage suppression via the draft, basically. Right. And like you'd make the LLM communist if you trained it right, is my point.
And that's our goal here.
That's what we're doing.
Okay. We jumped ahead because we had to talk about Mr. Flavio Tranquillo, but what is quickly becoming an important, other than our lawyer becoming the NBA's preeminent basketball blogger, another big thing in the Nothing But Respect lore is the breaking of weak link theory on the Nothing But Respect podcast, which again, we were joking in our group chat because I had just assumed that you had written that piece before you came on the show. Let me back up. You came on Nothing But Respect last time. It was a great episode, and you discussed this idea of the weak link theory, which did immediately resonate. I had a bunch of people text me being like, dude, the fucking weak link theory, that's a really interesting idea. But then we started seeing it everywhere. Like Kirk Goldsberry brought it up. It's just people have kind of like alluded to it in all these different ways. My question for you, Owen, is like, what was the experience of seeing your idea go kind of nuclear?
Like nothing, because I just like you like just. I mean, the dirty secret is just like yeah, you feel it on like Twitter, but like it doesn't get credited back to you at all. People just screenshot it, and then they're like, "This guy wrote this thing," and it's like no link to the Substack post. So,
not a single dollar of in the
the weak link theory is itself sort of a weak link here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll kind of give you the origin story behind it, which is that like I've been thinking about it a lot and was gonna write about it eventually, and I wanted to do it after the postseason because I sort of thought the playoffs would play out basically this way, which is like Oklahoma City would go up against some team in the East that had like 8 or 9 guys that were really good, but no one great player. And then I was like, you know what, that's hacky shit to let the playoffs play out and then put a narrative over the top of it. Let's actually try to predict the playoffs with this narrative. So I wrote that up and sent it out. And honestly, for like the first week or so, like it's, the people who read the newsletter were like, oh, that's cool. But then there was like this amazing moment where like LeBron and Luka got eliminated by the Timberwolves, and then Giannis got eliminated by the Pacers, like in a span of like 2 or 3 days. And then there was like all this chatter online of like, oh, wow, maybe having the best star player doesn't seem to matter anymore. And so I just like reposted my Substack post about the weak link theory and was like, this. And that kind of took off and did numbers. But yeah, I don't think like I really got much out of it other than, a few extra subscribers or anything like that, because I think a lot of people just kind of started passing it off as like their own idea. Like they're like, oh, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and this is what I think. And then like someone sent me a couple of posts of like people on TikTok being like, oh, have you guys heard about this weak link theory? And I'm like, oh, what the hell? So
they're making
I don't think it really
$10,000 a post on that.
Yeah. So I think what was frustrating was like, frustrating is the wrong word. I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Was that I would get these messages from people who were like, oh, hey, we just did like 15 minutes on the radio about the weak link theory. Super interesting. And I was like, all right, thanks for the invite. Like, you can bring me on to talk about that, So, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gotten a number of emails and Twitter comments being like, wow, Patrick, it's so great that you came up with the weak link theory. And I had to be like, thank you. That's, it's hard. No. And I directed them to your Substack. It's
a good time to actually mention that, like, I'll take credit for maybe popularizing it at this point in time, but by no means am I like the first person to speculate that we're moving towards more of a weak link sport. In fact, like there was chatter about it during the Raptors championship run, which is like, if you go back and look at their roster, like it's easy to get fooled by the fact that like, oh, they had Kawhi Leonard and he was awesome during that playoff run, but they also were like stacked like 1 through 8 on that team. Like they had Fred VanVleet and like Norm Powell and Serge Ibaka coming off the bench.
Good Marc Gasol.
There was and OG Anunoby was injured that entire playoff run. Like they just had a team full of guys that were awesome or just not bad from top to bottom. But I think we all kind of got caught up in the fact it's like, oh, they had Kawhi. That's the difference in this year. So like that was the first aha moment to me, which is like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And then, but this year was the year that I thought it really resonated because there was so much consternation about who the best players in the league were and why their teams weren't succeeding as much as maybe people thought they should be. So it just kind of worked out as a perfect confluence of events.
Yeah, and like this regular season, there's been this big shift towards like the best defenses have won more. Like I think the Rockets are like a really interesting anti-weak link team. And I think, you've just seen this like larger shift like in the regular season. And I that was the big test case for me is coming into the playoffs. And we're about to maybe get like a Thunder Pacers final, which would be like the strongest possible thesis or support of this thesis, I think.
Mm-hmm. To be fair, I also thought the Pacers were going to lose to the Cavaliers, and because I just thought the Cavaliers were built similar to the Pacers, but just in a slightly better way. But no, I'll certainly take Pacers as a worthy stand-in for the weak link theory, because I mean you're hearing so many people talk about, well, Tyrese Halliburton's overrated, or he's not even a top 15 player, and it's like it doesn't really matter. It's because TJ McConnell doesn't suck. That's why the team is good. Like they have these 8 guys who are all pretty good.
And to this like much earlier point about defining consensus reality differently, I want to push back on your Raptors as weak link theory supporting team, because they actually are the strongest possible support for the idea that if you want to win a championship, you should have a son in like May, because Fred VanVleet famously spawned. He helped produce a son, and then like did not miss a shot for a month. And we've seen. I was briefly tracking this for a while, but like 6 or 7 other guys had the like new father bump. And so I think the new analytics strategy is going to be like trying to time the arrival of kids around the start of the playoffs. Like you're going to see this, like the training staff and everyone's going to be like, all right, man, 10 months out, like get busy. That's my theory.
I've genuinely long believed that a complete like sliding doors moment in the NBA was when Tatum had a kid, because it locked his swag. It like completely stunted his swag growth, but turned him into kind of like a 5-tool, mature, grounded dad player. And that basically has defined his career as sort of someone with stunted dad swag as a 19-year-old, but who can do everything and help teams win. And we have Deuce to thank for that, in part. And his the mother of his child, whose name I don't know. Okay.
So fatherhood is to be blamed for the crisis of swaghood in the NBA,
yes,
as y'all's lawyer would point out.
Yes, I wonder if Shea becomes a father, like I think people think about him so differently, But it's funny to think about, because like Ant is like famously a father.
An interesting counter to this. Maybe it switches every time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like the universe rolls a dice, and if it's like an odd number, then like your son is going to destroy your swag, and if it's an even number, then like you will draw power from your son.
Exactly. And Ant's rolling a Dungeons and Dragons dice because he's fucking knocking so many people up. It's a 20-sided die.
It's like rolling a D100. So I wonder. I feel like Knicks Pacers is like the more interesting series to talk about the weak link stuff, because like I feel like every game is like the Knicks jump out to like a 12-4 lead because like Brunson hits like 4 jumpers, and then like the second they get 1 turnover, it's like the game just ends because it's just Pascal sprinting up the floor every single time, and then like they make a sub and it's Ben Mathurin sprinting up the floor every single time. And like I wonder how much of that is like a system thing, or how much of that is like we play 10 guys, all of whom know that they can foul out freely and that they can sprint as much as possible because there's always like someone else to take their place. Like, do you think this is a Pacers specific thing with their personnel, or like are they just hacking the parameters of the game to give themselves like a 15% advantage?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if I have a good answer for it. I mean, Henry Abbott's been calling it like the intensity system, which I really like a lot, calling the Pacers shtick the intensity system. And just like having 10 guys who are just going balls to the wall, and like when you run out of breath, you can just bring somebody else in to give you a blow. I like that idea a lot in how, but I think it only works as like if you started doing it in the regular season as well. Like you can't just like turn it on in the playoffs and be like, all right, like Jarris Walker, it's your turn to get in there for 15 minutes and wreck shit for a little while. Like he has to have built that confidence up during the regular season. And which is why, like, I think the Pacers kind of got off to like a shaky start this regular season. And maybe it's because like they were building towards this moment, like take your lumps early, like get these guys these reps. And then by the time that we're at the end of the regular season going into the playoffs, everybody will have like be up to form to try out this strategy. So,
and your comparative advantage is less when everyone's fresh. Like they're such a good them and the Thunder way more, but like both of those teams are so good in second halves because it's just if you're swarming, it's like it becomes increasingly hard to resist the longer the game or the season goes on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like
go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, Harry.
I was going to say I there is also a cousin to this is like an object in motion stays in motion kind of thing where I've sensed that one of the Knicks' problems with Brunson controlling isn't that he's ball dominating and creating inefficient offense because he's creating like very efficient offense. But I do see the experience of you are on offense for the Knicks. You are standing somewhere you're slow. Your whole thing is sort of about these like methodical like dashes to a cut or whatever, but you are not in a flow state by any stretch. And then you immediately are on defense and need to be in a blitz, like sprinting around everywhere. Whereas, and I sense, I mean, the Knicks are like, cannot stay in front of the Pacers. They cannot stay in front of the cutters. Like they're getting, I've never seen this many kind of like lose your man, just wide open dunks in a playoff round. And my sense is because one part of it is that they are getting caught, they're getting lulled into one style of basketball on offense, and they're not just physically able to do it on the other side.
I love that idea that you just talked about like being in motion on offense helps you be in motion on defense. It's like your body gets cold when you're sitting there on offense, like you're idling.
Oh yeah.
And then it takes a while to get back up to speed. That's really smart. I like that. But there's trade-offs to all this stuff, right? Like the reason the Knicks play that strategy is because they don't want to turn the ball over. And if you just have one guy dribbling it whose only decisions are shoot the ball if you're somewhat open, which is what Brunson's very good at, or make the pass that's wide open because there's two guys on you. It's like, all right, you don't pass the ball that much on offense. The other four guys aren't involved all that much, but your turnovers are super low, and so you're not giving up these transition baskets. But I guess what the Pacers have been able to do is just like speed Brunson up just a little bit and just like make that extra pass just a little bit harder or a little harder to make and stuff like that. And yeah, so that's super interesting. I like that idea though about being cold on offense. Makes you worse on defense too.
That's such, I never thought of it. That's such a good theory. And I think like the things specifically that makes Halliburton so good is that he is such a low turnover player, despite playing like a relatively like Crash Bandicoot kind of crazy ass running around style. And like he does all those things that you sort of mentioned as like prone to high turnover stuff. Like he kind of throws some like more ambitious passes and stuff. And yet his turnover rate remains like very, very low.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote about this like a couple weeks ago, which is that like these like four remaining teams, like you can kind of see like how the outcome of the game is going to be played sort of through this idea of the turnover economy, which is like how many turnovers are you committing on offense versus how many you're forcing on defense. And that's sort of how the Thunder have played all year. But they also like people focus in on the fact that they generate just a shit ton of turnovers. But the really cool thing that I think is like more interesting and less talked about is that Shea just like never turns the ball over. Yeah. And it's because they play that same style that Brunson does, which is like Shea gets the ball, he does one of two things. He cooks the guy in front of him or he passes to an open shooter. And I think one of the reasons they struggled with the Nuggets is because the Nuggets were like, all right, we're going to throw this zone at you. You can't dribble just straight past one guy because there's going to be three other guys waiting for you. You're going to have to pass the ball. And I think it kind of like mucked things up a little bit and kind of short-circuited their brain, but until they figured it out.
Yeah. The other thing, the other question I had about the Indiana series, which I genuinely don't know, is, but I've saw some broadcasters talking about this, and I've also seen it, this peculiar reality that Brunson likes the Nembhard matchup. Like that Nembhard, who is this good, bulky defender, but Brunson just seems to like that matchup and goes at it a lot. It's interesting. It's weird that a player prefers the matchup with the good defender. But then the other part that I think is maybe leaving some points on the table for the Knicks is they're not really making Halliburton work that much. And I don't know if that was one of the strange things. I was like, don't you want to just put? I remember the one time I talked to, like one of the few times I've talked to a actual league office or an NBA team guy about how to stop something. I was asking the Suns guy about how they were going to stop Jokic, and he was like, we're not going to stop Jokic. We just have to put him in 1,000 pick and rolls. That's the only way we can stop him. And I would think that that's kind of the same with the Pacers, but
Yeah, I do remember like last year when I was with the Knicks and we played the Pacers, like that was clearly our best strategy, was to just put Halliburton as many pick and rolls as possible and just hunt him relentlessly. I haven't really looked at the numbers to say whether or not like it's dramatically different this year, but there is something about like why Jalen likes that Nembhard matchup so much. I think it's because like physical defenders don't bother him as much as like long defenders do. Like guys like the Herb Jones and Aaron Nesmith and like Matisse Thybulle, like those are the guys that I think he struggles with more, as opposed to like Nembhard, who's just like built solid rock and is just like Brunson is kind of the same. He can just create that little bit of separation and knock him off his balance a little bit, and then he's got a shot that he's comfortable with. Whereas like these longer guys, even if you knock them off their spot, they can recover so quickly because they're so long and like get a good contestant and stuff like that. So yeah, maybe there's something there.
That's like a fun thing about this point in the playoffs is like the matchups are all so specific like that. Like the Pacers are playing Tony Bradley because it's like, okay, Mitchell Robinson's sort of dominance of the inside, even though like Bradley's like not that good, it's like just having another huge guy like neutralizes that effect. Or like in the other series, you're seeing like Jalen Clark and Terrence Shannon minutes because it's like we just need like a 6'8" guy who like runs around and hits people, and like that's like not as useful. Like I mean, they didn't really need to do anything against the Warriors because no Steph, but like, you know, against the Thunder, like you kind of just need to like, their advantage is being big, mean, and nasty. And so like the bigger, meaner, and nastier you can go, like the better you are. So I sort of wonder too if like as like teams get more competitive and weak links get stronger, do you think a separator between really great teams is the ability to like play in these kind of different ways? Like if you have 10 guys, all of a sudden, like you can play all these different ways. Like the Thunder can like roll Kenrich Williams out there, or like, okay, we can do double big sometimes or zero big other times. And like that lineup versatility seems to be increasingly important.
Yeah, no, I wanted to give Harry credit for talking about this on last week's podcast, is that like there's this idea that depth doesn't matter in the playoffs, and it's like, well, it's kind of a misnomer. It's not the idea that you can play 10 guys in any given game. It's that you can play 8 guys in different combinations more regularly.
Did I just plagiarize Harry's theory that he said last week? My bad.
No, you didn't plagiarize. I think it's an evolving. You know, we're in a freaking.
We're all sharing the same brain. Yeah,
we're in a
good
dialogue.
stuff.
Wait, I just had this idea. Like, you know how usually the team with the best player wins? Just kidding.
Wait,
Yeah.
What I want to talk about is this idea that I've had, which is that the NBA is having a swag recession.
Oh shit, you should write about that.
Yeah.
Can we actually talk about that? Because I actually have some thoughts about like why that piece is so fucking good, and it resonated a lot with me, and I've been thinking a lot about it. So sorry to diverge from the idea of depth mattering and all that stuff in the playoffs, but I was thinking about it a lot.
Let's talk. Yeah. What did you think?
I was texting with a friend of mine, and he loved it piece as well, and we were talking about why like players today seem less cool. And I think the obvious answer, it's not as fun, is like we're older, and so everyone seems less cool, especially particularly the people that are younger. But like I want to put that aside for a minute, and I think like the idea is that like being really good at something now in the NBA, like you have to try so hard to actually be that good, and like there's a negative connotation with being a tryhard. Like trying hard is not cool. You know what I mean? It's like, it reminded me a little bit of the movie Challengers, where like the one guy who's kind of a fuck up and like is like not as good and not as dedicated is clearly the cooler of the two. Whereas the guy who's like more clinical and takes the right path and like does all the right training is objectively the better tennis player, but is extremely uncool. And it's like, I think like to be that good at something, particularly in the NBA, requires so much like try hard dedication to something that the coolness just like evaporates from you. I don't know about you guys, but like the people I know who have really dedicated their lives to something, even if like the thing that they're dedicating their lives to is cool, they themselves are not always the coolest people. It's because they've just like totally insulated themselves into this like idea of how to be the best at this thing. It's like the guy from Whiplash or something like that. Like, you know, he's not particularly cool either, but like he's just gone all in on this idea of like, I need to be the best.
I think that's like totally true. Like a totally good read. And to say something uncool, another one of my big sports is cycling. And like in cycling, fucking no one is cool because you have to spend 7 hours on your bike every day. So it's like, it's like kind of what you said about like training or like dedicating so much of your life to the point that like you like necessarily can't be cool. It's like an entire sport of those people. And that totally, like, to me, that is why like Ant is like, everyone loves Ant because what he does appears effortless, and like effortlessness is cool, you know?
I also think we've talked a lot about at various times these sort of how basketball is becoming professionalized at younger ranks, it's becoming more of a middle class sport, you know, those kinds of things. One of the components where I think coolness falls into this, that this piece made me think of, is how kids younger and younger, and what you were just saying made me think of it, is like they are also being adopted into the cult of earnestness earlier and earlier and more profoundly, because and I'd say that not necessarily in a bad way or whatever, but like when you are like when I played AAU basketball as a young kid, and when I was like at these early you know, the when I touched the highest level that I would touch, so much of the conversations that coaches were having with kids was basically around like a commitment to being earnest and earnestly attempting your sport, and like you just said, being sort of like insanely earnestly committed to your craft, which again is very admirable and interesting and all that, but is not cool. And in a culture of which that we are surely guilty of this, of being kind of leaning more ironic and passé and everything, like I think you end up a little bit lost in the waters of coolness if you spent your entire childhood going to like Nike EY Bell feeder camps where a coach tells you to, you know, tuck your shirt in or whatever.
Totally. I mean, there's also just like I think it was Bill Simmons or somebody else talked about it, or it's like a Chuck Klosterman thing or something like that, where like people who become famous, they stop aging the moment they become famous. So like, you know, if you're 14 years old and that's when you start getting national attention, like that's when you stop like maturing as a person, or whatever. I mean, it's probably a bullshit theory, but I do kind of like that in the sense of like a lot of these NBA players seem like they're really still stuck in like a teenager mindset in some ways. But again, that's just me being older, I think, too, and looking down and being like, what the fuck is going on? Like, when I was 14 years old, like, or 12 years old, Tracy McGrady was like the coolest player in the world to me. Like, there was nobody cooler. Now that I'm in my 30s, like, Tracy McGrady follows me on Twitter. He's not cool if he's following me on Twitter. Like, it's very obvious to me that that guy's maybe not as cool as I thought he was when I was younger, when I knew less about him.
Right. Yeah.
I think there's a sort of obvious like race element to a lot of this too, because like so much of basketball marketing is like we are marketing black people to white fans, and like that like sort of encapsulates like in the crudest possible sense the like marketing of cool over the last like 100 years or so. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see how Cooper Flagg is marketed and talked about as sort of this like Lisan Al-Gaib figure of like a white American superstar in like what I think a lot of people will very cynically think of as like a post-racial sport in a time in America specifically where like things are like very like race relations are not at an all-time high. And I don't really know what the point of all that is, but it will be crazy to see what happens there.
Yeah. No, that I think you're right. That is
like I didn't watch one of the Thunder losses to the Nuggets. Maybe I said this already, but like I pulled up Twitter or something, and the first image I saw was the Chet JPEG of him saying like oxtails, and I was like, oh, the Thunder must have just lost. That's crazy. And you could just tell instantly from that they lost.
That's hilarious. I have a cousin thought to this, which is my friend Eli said we were watching the game the other day, and he the Pacers Knicks game the second game they lost, and he said something that I thought was very profound, which was he said, are there no more new celebrations? Like, have we gotten to the end of 3-point celebrations. Has every single possible 3-point celebration been mined? Because I think he was saying the choke thing had just happened, and it was like we are in the recycled IP era of celebrations, where now the new one is to look back. And I think it's a cousin of this piece where I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if there's no new ones. Part I want to be like, there's got to be new ones, but I guess if you go through like how many 3-point hands you can do, whatever. To me, it seems more likely that what a younger generation reads as paying homage to the images that were reflected back to them on their phones all the time, we read as like cribbing, and that actually like we're probably wrong in that way, like that they're just being like, no, it's like it isn't an homage. I'm doing what my favorite basketball player growing up did. Like that is fucking actually awesome and actualizing to me. So I don't know. That's my theory. But what do you think about the celebrations?
Yeah, to me, it's just sort of, I find so many 3-point celebrations specifically to be kind of corny. Like if you dunk on a guy, then I think that's like a more cool thing to celebrate. Like seeing Jalen Williams hit a huge 3 to like extend the lead to 12 over a team that's like objectively way worse than like do his little thing just feels like, come on, man. Like you just stood there and Shea did all the work and like, what are we doing here? Although like maybe this is why people like the Jaw thing from earlier this year so much, where he was just like innovating new munitions and firearms to like shoot at people. Like that was like fun. Like and maybe it's just because it was new that people liked it.
I was just gonna say, to be fair, like everything on the people on OKC do looks weird. Like that's just a team of weird looking people. Like ever since my brother pointed it out to me that every single character on the Oklahoma City Thunder looks like I don't know, like they all just look strange. Like Shea looks like Gumby. Like Isaiah Hartenstein kind of looks like Johnny Drama a little bit from Entourage. Like Jalen Williams has like this like LeBron-sized body, but like the smallest little head. It's like Dort is very strange. Chet is. I don't even need to like explain why Chet looks weird. He looks
Caruso's
like...
head is like crystalline. Like it on the TV, especially when they're wearing the blue uniforms. It like I don't like looking at that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're the first augmented reality team. There's like subtle reality augmentations
And then they still have this Nikola Topic guy coming in off the next year who's like, I don't know if you noticed, like his neck is like a foot long or something that. Yeah,
dude,
like,
it's a foot long and like thick. Like he's sort of
getting weirder. It's only getting weirder for
like imagine a giraffe that went to the gym.
Thunder.
Like that's also like I think he's going to be good too, because I remember before he tore his ACL, there was like, oh, Topic is going to be the number 1 pick. Like they've identified a new Nikola.
Oh.
Yeah, or he's just going to be trade ballast for, Giannis or whatever if they decide to cash in their chips eventually.
You know that if the Thunder make the finals, we're going to get like a whole discourse cycle from the Cranks about like these guys, because they put towels on the interviewer when they interview them, they represent the new softness of the new generation. They're unserious. They don't care about winning. If Kobe was on the court, he would have pulled out a knife and like cut them all like down. Like that's what's going to come if they win.
Yeah,
it's going to suck.
I don't have I haven't really fully formed this take, but like one of the things I think that turns me off from this Oklahoma City Thunder team, and I think you've used the term theater kid energy before, is that it really reminds me of that the actress from the show The Bear. And like people really like her, but I keep getting like strong like theater kid vibes from her, where it's like very clear she like in high school was like performing all the time and stuff like that, and that comes through in her performances on camera. And I feel the same way for some reason watching the Oklahoma City Thunder, that these guys were all like performing at a very early age some way or another, and now it's coming through in their post-game interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, was it Ock who said that like Shea in his post-game interview carries himself like someone playing a basketball player in a movie? Because ever since he said that, I like can't. It feels so true to me.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
wonder if it's like the old stories from the early 2010s was like Westbrook and Kevin Durant and Steven Adams are just sitting around watching movies. That's all they do. And, and that was quaint. But what the new, because there's nothing to do in Oklahoma, what they're doing is they're just watching TikTok videos of themselves for hours and hours
Oh
and
no!
hours.
I'm so glad you reminded me of this. You ever seen that viral picture of like Tim Duncan and the Spurs on the Plains playing World of Warcraft together?
Of course, yes.
Yes.
Sorry to fact check you. They're playing StarCraft.
Get his ass.
Oh, excuse me. The other Blizzard entity.
Yes.
Yeah. No. That's why they were so good. It's because they were chopping it up, after the game and during the game and stuff like that.
One final thing before we get you out of here is you had a tweet that really resonated with me, which was you were poking fun at the Zach Lowe thumbnail of a recent Zach Lowe podcast where he is kind of like soy facing with Chris Mannix, and you were like the greatest basketball writer of our generation is been reduced to soy facing on YouTube. And so I had the exact same thought, first of all, when I saw it, because I have been, and I want to first say genuinely, like, I don't think, if I had to guess, my read is that Lowe does not want to be soy facing on YouTube. He has had a fairly consistent career of like being adverse to that type of stuff. He kept his podcast audio only for about as long as you humanly could as the whatever. There's all these stories of him not wanting to go on TV. He didn't even want to do a podcast, whatever. Like, I don't think I bet he didn't even choose the thumbnail, as a person who's out here choosing thumbnails. I suspect it was not Lowe who chose that thumbnail, but it just felt like such a miss to be doing that. And I know it's subtle and I don't want to harp on it too much, but like it feels like such a misreading what consumers want, or misreading what the metric bump you get from a soy face gets, and that leading to dollars and cents. Like the Zach Lowe, people don't come to Zach Lowe because he's sensationalized and YouTube algorithmically friendly. They come to him because he's like thoughtful, and to align him aesthetically with the least thoughtful visual concept in the world, which is like a person holding their face staring at the camera, is just such a creative misstep. Like I cannot believe that the apparatus, I guess it's the Ringer or social team or whoever, like they gotta stop.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is the equivalent of, writers don't write their own headlines, podcasters don't choose their own thumbnails and stuff like that. So, and I definitely think like the screen cap they have of him is just like a face he happened to be making while recording, and not one that he was like, all right, time to do my soy face. Side note, I once like tuned into a Hollinger and Duncan podcast, and they had a whole segment. They're like, all right, let's do this soy face. Like, or like they were like, all right, we need to get a screen cap for the thumbnail, so let's go ahead and like make a face. And they were kind of being tongue in cheek about it, but I didn't like seeing the magic behind the facade and stuff like that. But yeah,
I was gonna say their YouTube channel also has these like the soy faces too, and it's funny listening to like, because Nate and Danny, like I do like that podcast, but it's like so dry, and it's very funny to see that specifically packaged. Like, maybe I think honestly this is just like, this is what happens on YouTube, and what happens on YouTube is not my problem.
I think this is just like maybe the Ringer trying to expand Zach Lowe's reach beyond like 25-year-olds and stuff like that who have grown up reading him, and trying to capture the younger generation of YouTube or NBA enjoyers who never read Grantland or clicked on an ESPN paywall article or anything like that.
Yeah, no, and look, I am a podcast producer. I freaking soy people's faces, So there's maybe I should re-say, like, you're right. Like, the people, surely my guess, most people who work at the Ringer and most people who work, well, whatever. My guess is most of these people probably don't even want to be doing the soy faces, and are just like, I'm trying to do my job, and this is what seems to work numerically, and that's what the money's for, so I'm gonna like make this thing, right? Like, I don't, that would be my guess. But I guess I without putting blame on specific people, I still like have a problem with the strategy of like the there just has to be a more creative way to monetize what Zach does than this kind of like pray and spray approach. Like, put his stuff behind some of his stuff behind a paywall, or like do some kind of like creative, again, like a packaging of thoughtful writing and thinking about basketball that doesn't involve signaling to your audience the most cynical, attention grabby thing. Like, and maybe it doesn't. I mean, I don't know. Like, Defector's an
It
example.
feels very growth hacky to me.
Yeah.
Like someone, like when I see that, I immediately think of like the BuzzFeed headline that's like 10 things or one small trick to fix your life or whatever. Like, that's what I think of when I see those thumbnails. I'm like, okay, they're trying to get my attention. I don't want to give it to them now. So I agree. Like, that seems like a big creative miss, but maybe that's because they've let go a lot of their video department at the Ringer. Like that Jason Gallagher guy, is now like killing it, doing his own thing. And I'm sure he probably has his own opinions about how they should be doing thumbnails on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, like these are like the structural incentives of the Ringer. Like they're owned by like the Spotify VC money is coming in, and like, they had a union drive that was like famously quashed, and like a ton of people left, and like they're clearly just pressing the get money button. So it's like, if that's just kind of the deal, I think.
Yeah, I guess I'm like trying to find this like weird techno optimism angle where like there's some way to make money and not do the fucking soy face, but maybe not.
This week's episode is brought to you by Coinbase.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we should put. Oh, by the way, we should put all the votes on chain. If we could just get all the NBA coin on chain. Yeah. Well, you know what? Here's a good way to. Here's an economic model. Subscribe to the F5 premium tier. Do all the stuff. If you are, I saw you gave away a free subscription, or somebody backed a subscription. That's very cool. I if you are a younger person or whatever, if you're anybody interested in trying to learn more about data viz and just sort of like thinking interestingly about basketball, I really can't think of somebody that you would want to learn more from than Owen. So definitely check out the F5.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Owen.